And I want to make it clear that this piece has no bearing whatsoever on the opening statement and apology I made, but there is some past overlay. And this is kind of what's playing out now as they target the three groups. You know, how is it only one person is held accountable for what they say on radio or blogs? How is it the only group who puts out transcripts for accountability is questioned on their narrative? How is it that there are several people who read news scripts and form their own opinions with no intel backgrounds, can sell all kinds of new age woo-woo, can charge their listeners, and yet my Patreon gets questioned? The only show who most weeks has a question and answer section in the show. Not to mention the question and answer section I get every day when I turn on Facebook or MeWe during the week. And yet we get accused of not answering questions. You know, one of these days I'm going to count up all the questions I get asked in a week. I imagine it's fairly staggering. How is it when someone gets into a position of perceived importance that is beneficial to the people? Do the people attack those few who are willing to stand up for them? Why is it that people are more intent on looking for faults in the narrative than providing solutions to our collective problems? And how is it that people can question what I put out in the shows? Those people don't spend the time questioning themselves as to why they were triggered by a portion of the show. Such is life, I suppose, and it's an example in many ways of child mind thinking from an overview, mired in the victimhood of their own unaddressed shadows. And you and we and I will never fix anything on this planet operating at that level. For too many now, the alt media has become a life distraction, mired in the drama, popularity contests and bickering that is a replica of the mainstream media platform. Why would we copy a failed platform? Were we not supposed to be the awake ones, different from the masses? Yet for some they spend their whole days looking for faults, cracks, perceived wrong information in others, when the problem is really them. They will not face up to their own reality and a lack of doing their own work on themselves. Now, these people stand out like beacons now. You've all noticed it. They dance in two worlds, acting like they're awake in ours, but their actions and words state differently. Who needs the cabal when we have people within our own alternative media community more intent on looking for faults, twisted words, unable to agree to disagree on points, questioning things that really have no relevance, and just rattle on with no direction or any specific purpose to it? It's not going to fix our world. Now, some of these people might be awake with some knowledge, they might have a lot of knowledge, and that is considered outside of the normal. But some of these people are fast asleep on the inside. They're kidding themselves only, as a lot more people can now see a lot easier than they did previously. And they kind of remind me in many ways of a kid's wind-up toy that is silent and says nothing, and then the button is pressed and then they repeat the same few sentences until the timer runs out, or until someone presses the button again, and again they repeat the same lines and same narrative. Well, the gist of that analogy is, despite pressing the button several times, nothing changes. It only changes if you change the toy or take the battery out, and then it all goes silent. And many of these people are using us as a battery consuming our energy with mindless drivel and nuances. And as Kim said in last week's show, don't play their game. Some people have reacted to last Saturday's show and stating that I'm blaming we the people too much for our role in this mess. And I'm sorry that they feel that way, but I will not apologise for saying anything in that show. Because over time and deep down, everybody really knows that everything stated within that show was near 100% correct. We have played a role in it. A bigger role than many would like to admit. I could give several examples. But in the last few weeks I've spoken to quite a few people, and one mentioned they bank at Wells Fargo. Another one mentioned they bank with HSBC, and one mentioned about buying something off Amazon. All very minor details. But why would you bank with Cabal Banks? Why would you buy from a company that is hell-bent on destroying all of the businesses? And as the Clowns in Panic show stated, Amazon are designated as the world brain roll in the future, which will destroy all of us. So why haven't you been a change on those aspects? And it all comes down to convenience is why. It's easier, Thomas. Yes, but easier doesn't help any of our goals, does it? Why would we vote for people to look after us when they've never looked after us ever? Why would we allow them to vaccinate our children without doing due diligence? Why would people take their pharmaceutical drugs when, if you read the disclaimer, you end up with potentially worse symptoms than you started off with? Nobody forced them down your throat. And why would 150 million working Americans allow 10 to 40% theft out of their wages each week and not complain? There's something that is not only illegal, but worse, it's voluntary. Why did we all ignore people in our own street who have had their homes stolen off them by banks? Why didn't we fight back? None of those things I've just mentioned cost money, just time, and a redirection of where your energy goes. So we can argue all day about how good or bad, it's not good, 5G is, or Trump's a pedo or Trump's not a pedo, or Epstein's dead or Epstein's not dead. Or we can focus on what is damaging our life day to day. That is where I'm coming from. There's an old child saying, when questioned, and I've said it many times myself, on whether they've done something wrong, the child responds, "It wasn't me, Mum," or "It wasn't me, Dad." All I see in those who fail to accept their role in things is that child going, "It wasn't me." Look, we have all done that throughout our lives. I'm no different to anybody else. But the alt media itself is riddled with finger pointing away from themselves. They're doing this, he's doing that, she's doing this, he's doing that. It's not solutions. And for a while in THI shows, I did it as well. It was all the cabal who did everything wrong. But it's not the correct picture from the overview, is it? And if we're going to lie to ourselves, we're not going to, if you're going to lie that we weren't part of it and they have to fix it, we'll wait forever. We have to fix our part. My shows are about balance and true perspective. And I am aware that some will react to some things that come out of the show. And again, I will make no apologies about that, because it's not meant in an offensive way. We have to grow a set. And I said in the very first THI show, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. Big difference. As well as we have to think and act different. Saturday's show was fantastic. Co-joining of the three groups, and also Kim chiming in on how we fix world problems. Is it a daunting task? Absolutely. There's a lot to correct. But it's no more daunting than the first Europeans who arrived here over 1,000 years ago. No, not 600 years ago. In fact, there's some evidence of reference to a Welsh guy, person from Wales, being here in the 500s. But even the ones from 600 years ago, they were called the pioneers. They started with nothing and built up. Now we start with much. We've got a leg up. Most of us have got homes and jobs and some money. They didn't. And we have an opportunity to forge a better path for the all, not the few. The four essentially separate groups all coming together for a common cause, to me, is wonderful to see. But it's up to you all to drive this collaboration, not just the four of us. All four are very busy with many things currently, and it's up to all participants to take some of that burden away from us, not increase it, and drive us all forward. 2 comments this week from 2 of our members. The first one: people in general are conditioned to externalize everything, including blame or fault. We're conditioned to think early on that to accept blame is a weakness, and so to keep from feeling or appearing weak, we try to pass it off onto others. It's a hard thing to break, but truth gets us nowhere. I was very lucky to have a mum who wouldn't allow me to do that, who taught me to think on my actions and to admit blame when it was mine. It was hard sometimes, very hard, but in the end, I have always felt better to admit my faults than to try and pass it off onto another. That person gets it, as do many others in the group.